Hey, welcome once again to Rise of the GM. Today we're going to be talking about calming a dragon's anger, an honorable warrior, and NPCs joining the party. What do you do about that? All that and more here on Rise of the GM. Well, hey, Adam. Welcome back. In that intro, I said calming a dragon's anger instead of anger. Didn't get my G very hard. So for those of you wondering what that's going to be, you'll see.
Oh, yeah.
A dragon's anger. It's like a hanger.
It's a new thing.
It's a new thing.
Need to know.
So what have you been up to these few days that we're in now, Adam?
This has been an RPG week for me. Which is fun, but also, time stuff. But Sam Grant, who came and talked a couple times, we talked about Fallout. I got to play in a Fallout game that was 2 sessions over the course of the last month.
How was it?
We finished that up. It was cool.
It was horrible, Sam.
Yeah. I think we had a little critique. I think all of us, the module was pretty open-ended, so I think that was kind of tough in some ways with the time crunch that we had. We had a little bit of a time crunch, so that was a little tough. I think it could have been, we probably could have had more sessions even, but the system's interesting. I really like specifically, there's this thing called AP, which I don't remember what it exactly means, but it's like a pool of points that the whole group gets use of to make re-rolls and stuff like that. And there's also a lot of ability to help each other. And then there's luck points too. And Matthew knows, that I love points that you can burn to do things, and so yeah. I actually held on to him for a while, but that was fun. We got to do that. And then Tuesday, I've been writing another Vaesen module for Drive-Thru RPG, and I got to do a play test. And it was really cool because last time for my playtesting, I ran the games. I ran a couple games for people. This time around, it was cool to have Sam Roten, who was on. We talked about planes in the not super long ago. He ran that, and it was pretty special, honestly, to get to see something that I had made get played by somebody else. I played, but he ran it. And it was super interesting too, because even though I had wrote the story, there were moments in the game where I'm like, what's going to happen next? It was really funny to be in that situation, and not meta in some ways, but also be wow, this is opened up in a way that I don't even know. I know where it eventually is going, but right now it was kind of cool. So
the next step is shrouded in mystery.
Yeah. So that was super cool, because that was a solid for me, for people to be willing to play test and help me make that better before I put that up on Drive-Thru. So yeah, excited about it.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Fun stuff. Fun RPG stuff.
Yeah.
And now your wife is probably ready for you to get back with the family.
Yeah. I definitely was is this going to work this week? Because there was a lot, but outside of that, it's just been rainy and kind of nasty. So I don't know if that's, you've probably been getting that too. So
yeah, which hasn't been so bad, because I have a lot of work to do that I have to do, inside type work. So the raininess kept me from wanting to go out and lay in the hammock and relax.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of those nicer days, that was really good.
I'll tell you what, we're going to jump into our encounter starter. It's about the dragon's anger.
Rob's ready.
Rob is ready for it. This one's called the Griffin's Claw, and here's the setup. So for years, there's been a pact between a dragon that lives atop a mountain and the people living in the town at the foot of the mountain. The people leave the dragon alone, and the dragon allows the people to live in peace. When the dragon then landed in the town square and destroyed the blacksmith's house with its fiery breath, there was a sign that something had changed. The dragon accused the town of cooperating in an attack against him and the theft of a very valuable artifact. The mayor denies town's involvement, but the dragon didn't believe him. It dropped this torn tabard bearing the symbol of a griffin clutching an axe. at the mayor's feet and delivered an ultimatum: return the artifact in 5 days' time, or the pact is null and void, and town's going to be razed to the ground. So, in the ensuing panic, people going crazy, people packing up their stuff to leave, doom criers out on the corners. The PCs are then enlisted to find out who attacked the dragon and to recover the artifact. They begin by investigating the symbol, right? This griffin holding the axe thing. And as they do, they find that there was this group of adventurers called the Griffin's Claw. Town folk can tell them that the Griffin's Claw band stayed in town just 2 nights ago and that they hail from a nearby town. And so after a 2-day journey, the Griffin's Claw party can be tracked down on the road toward the nearest city, where they are planning to sell the artifact. They're your stereotypical adventuring party, and they have no intention of returning the artifact at all, though they'll happily sell it to you for a steep price, much like your party would do if they had something. Right? If confronted about their attack on the dragon, they're not remorseful at all, just like your party probably wouldn't be. After all, they say dragons are evil, and the Griffin's Claw should be, this other adventuring group should be equal in power to your PC's party, right? And you can choose to make them flamboyant if you want to have a more humorous adventure, or cold and calculating if you want to have a darker tone to this thing. The PCs can fight them for the artifact. They can come up with a ruse to steal it from them. They can try anything you want, anything they want to try, and then that's the encounters, figuring out how to do that. But even once they get it, assuming they do get it, en route back to the dragon's lair, which is another 2-day journey, the PCs encounter inclement weather that threatens their chances of returning the artifact in time to save the town. So they have to figure out how to quickly get through whatever that is, and you have to come up with what kind of weather that is. But if they make it in time, the dragon will honor its side of the bargain, and everything is fine. If they don't, then you have to figure out what to do at that point. Do they fight the dragon as it's coming to the town? Do they allow it to raise the town? That's part of the encounter. So this one's the Griffin's Claw, and gives a nice chance for some things to happen in a couple different ways, just as far as how you design it, whether you make it more comedic with the flamboyant other group, right. Competitive, or cold and calculating, and just like a more gritty type situation. So what do you think of this one, Adam?
Yeah, I think it's fun. I like dragons when they're not just like, oh, here's this creature.
It's going to fight you no matter what.
It's like we don't have a lot of interaction, and we just immediately we walk into a cave, there's a dragon, we fight, kind of thing. Like I like there to be a bigger part of that, and I think that's cool. I find like anytime there's like another adventuring party, I think that's interesting, kind of thing. It fills out the world more, and it's like we're not the only people out here doing this. I think it's kind of a neat piece. And I like the time thing. I think there's some like complication with that as a GM that you got to like work through, but I like that there's like an urgency to the time that you have to play with and count. So yeah, I think it's a good one all over. The details and everything. Definitely time passing matters like a lot in this. So like being aware of that as you're going through. I mean, they have that built in where it's like basically the PCs travel for 2 days there and they travel for 2 days back. There's like 1 day they have of leeway, of just like how you're doing this. And so I think I talked about this one time with the travel question maybe, but like I like to give reasons where they have to make decisions of like, okay, well, these people are asking for help on the way, and if we're going to be big heroes, then like we should probably go do that, but also we don't have time we have to stay focused, like making those decisions matter, and trying to pull people away, or maybe this won't take too long, it's only just right off the road, and combat's only like 60 seconds anyway, it should be fine. But like that stuff, like being constant pulls when it's like you need to stay focused and keep your eyes fixed. But there's this other stuff. I think that's definitely, they put that in at the end, of inclement weather or whatever, slowing them down. But I would want to put some more things in there too, of like, maybe this is the thing that ties into even somebody's story, that makes them want to veer this way. But if they do, then you're not making it back in time, kind of deal. So
Right.
yeah,
I think one of my favorite parts of this would be sitting down and deciding the makeup of the other adventuring group, the
yeah,
Griffin's Claw.
right, right,
They say you should make it in, roughly the same power level. I
hmm
would even go so far as to, too often our PCs can easily, fight through anything. They don't
right,
really lose a lot. This would be an opportunity for me to like kind of make people who are the antithesis of my players, who
hmm
can vastly exploit the weaknesses that they have.
yeah, yeah,
And so, if one of your guys like a huge fire guy, the other guy can be like, immune to fire, but
right,
does like crazy cold damage or
yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
Uh, and then, you have just kind of, not that you're going to precisely counter everything they can do, but you do want to like make it challenging. So that would be fun for me. And I would probably end up going with the more humorous route myself.
yeah,
And then, with the inclement weather, you have to think about like what's going to really cause them problems as they try to head back, because too much, they'll be like, well, we just go through it. Well, you got to have
yeah,
something that's going to slow them down
right,
a
yeah,
bit and make it tough. So
for sure.
it would take some planning and thinking there, but yeah, this could
Yeah,
be a good one.
yeah. I think I think I'd want to go the more humorous group to, or lighthearted or whatever. Like, one, because it's less of a chance that they're just going to outright attack these people, kind of thing, like that, just from like a strategy of a GM style. Like if they're these like grim, like we're gonna fight, like it's like their combat's happening, like they're gonna fight each other, gonna
Right.
take this thing back. And I don't see that. Now they can be hardcore, and I do like the idea, like what you said, of maybe these people could even dismantle the PCs if they really wanted to. It's like they're almost like creating a foil for the party that you have. Like these people are even like built to be foils for them. I think is interesting, but they still could be lighthearted and goofy, even of like just not that serious. We're immediately going to go into combat, so I'd probably lean that way too.
And if you make them kind of goofy and non-serious, it's less likely that they're going to want to just like fight and kill them, especially
Yeah,
if they strike them as like just a party who's, out doing what they think is fun
right.
and
Yeah.
helping, say this artifact is something the next town needs.
hmm
But they're going to sell it to them because of course
Yeah.
they want the loot and the money. But
Right.
but
Yeah.
when they don't kill them, they decide, what are we going to do? Okay, well, we're going to steal it, right? So they steal it, they break in, they pull off the heist, and then they get half a day's journey away, and it like turns into a small cookie with the words "You've been fooled" on it, and it's like because it's an illusion guy that they're
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
other
yeah,
party or
yeah,
something. Then they're like, "Dang, time is almost running out.
yeah,
Now we really do have to get it."
yeah, yeah, yeah. Rob mentioned, what if that item that they're retrieving is related to the PC? Do they keep it or save the town? Like that's like another layer of,
Oh yeah,
okay, so I actually think, the thing that's coming to mind is what you did, Matthew, with the um was that the sandstone, where like Amira wanted it, but also the dude on the
yeah.
airship wanted it, and the town
Government
was trying
guy
to get
wanted
it
it.
so they could pay their tax, to the kingdom and all that. Like there was that going on where, there were multiple agendas coming into
Right.
play, where, it like this could matter no matter what we choose. Like that could have mattered deeply to what was going on in the world. And we could have chosen differently. It may have went poorly, but like that, that was kind of interesting. I think you could play that a little more, like what Rob's saying there, of maybe, the the village of the town that the one of the PCs is from also could benefit greatly from this thing. Or, how do you deal with that? Do you give it back? Do you take it? But
Right. And I think in that one that you're talking about, there was the government of the town wanted it, and we had somebody who was kind of upstanding in that group who might have chosen to go that way. But then the Thieves Guild was trying to get it, and it ended up that the head of the Thieves Guild there was one of the players' dad,
right.
or had
God's
been
boy.
Todd's boy was in the party, and they wanted his help, and I don't think he helped him.
No.
Todd was no longer in the picture. I mean, yeah, Todd was no longer in the picture.
No.
They were just like, hey, you're Todd's boy, and you can be part of this thieves guild in a higher, and he disregarded it. And then of course Amira, which was one of the players' cousin, was
an NPC that joined the party, by the way.
An NPC that joined the party.
Interesting. Interesting.
I think maybe we should talk about that a little bit.
I think we should.
So cool. Good encounter.
Yeah,
but it does lead us as a natural bridge to our main topic of the day. That is this idea of NPCs joining the party, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was thinking about this, and this has played a pretty big role in my RPG experience. I think, in one of the reasons I think it's why it came to my mind is I have always very much enjoyed when this happens. And we'll see where we go with our conversation today. There may be a second part of this, or may not be, where we talk a little more, just depending on the conversation today. But this idea of okay, the PCs are traveling, and we come across all these NPCs on a pretty regular basis in taverns and on the side of the road and in dungeons and on mountaintops and all these, there's all these people who are real people in our imaginary worlds, that are doing things and moving. And sometimes there's a reason for them to join up and to travel with the party, whether that's a short time or a long time. And just wanted to kind of talk about reasons that could happen today, what that could look like for them to join and be a part of that. I would say at first, I don't think I'm coming in this, I really enjoy it, but I don't believe that this is you must make NPCs join the party. That's definitely not where I'm coming from at all. I don't think it's a necessary thing. But I think it's a possibility, and I think you can bring some fun dynamics to it. So just kind of wanted to kick that off a little bit and talk about some of the times that we've had that happen. Amira being one of them, which is a really cool piece of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think as you're deciding, so a lot of times this kind of pops up on its own. But as a GM, you need to have some things in mind when you're considering, do I add an NPC to the party, or do I just hold them back and the party has to go on without them?
Right.
And so we want to talk about what are some of those considerations, and what are some things you need to think about kind of throughout the process of an NPC joining the party. And I think you start with what's the purpose and the role of this NPC in the party? Why? And when I think about that, I think mainly of three areas. What's the motivation for the NPC to even join up, right? What's their reason for joining a party? Are they seeking help from the party? And then they come to the party and stay with them? Are they offering guidance for this party in some way? And we've talked about those kinds of things. Is there an alignment of the party and them having a common goal? Which in the case of Amira, it was kind of a mix between an aligning goal. They were trying to get this Wrathstone, but then she was kind of offering guidance because she had this. So they all have these tattoos on the back of their necks that marks them as some sort of chosen something. She had a different one, owl eyes, that realized that she could kind of sense and guide toward these stones of power that they were looking for. And so she ended up joining, but you have to think about what's the motivation for this? It's not just gathering people everywhere you go and oh, this is a cool person, I like them, I'm going to make them join the party. And I'm going to make them. That can get very unwieldy after a while, because you also have to think then, what's their role in the party going to be? Will they fill a skill or a need that the party's lacking? We've talked a lot in here about when parties are hey, can we meet somebody who's a heal bot? Because they always want somebody who's just standing there with nothing better to do than to cast heal on them repeatedly as an NPC. Everybody wants that. I typically, if I have somebody like that with them, they're not with them for very long, because I don't want them to come to depend on that crutch. But that could be a role that they would have. Or will they add to the existing kind of dynamic of what the party
Mhm.
needs. You know, we
Right.
talk about having a session zero and kind of making sure, hey, everybody think about what everybody else is playing so you can know,
Mhm.
are we able to do all the things we want to do? Sometimes, you
Yeah.
know, you try to get well rounded. Sometimes everybody's like, nope, forget that. We're just all going to be the same and we're going to be
Right.
awesome at what
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah.
But that might be a place, again, where there might be a purpose for an NPC if they have nobody who can like get rid of traps, but they're going into like, you know, the huge trap dungeon
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
or you know, unlocking doors because they have to steal something and
Mhm.
all of them are just big bonehead fighters. You know, it's like, what
Yeah.
do you do here?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I think the third thing when you're thinking about purpose and role is what's their contribution to the story going to be? How are they going to further the plot
Yep.
or the story arc, right? How is their presence going to create opportunities or challenges for
Mhm.
your party? And
Mhm.
again, as you're considering, do I add one? I think these are like the first set of things that I would think about.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I like that a lot. Those were things I was kind of thinking through too. I an example that I, may or may not land with people is like I think was thinking about the D&D movie just now as you were talking, and the paladin guy that they have come in.
Right.
Like he's not like part of the party really, but there's this point where they're like, well, we need to find this thing, and he knows where it's at and how to get it and all this stuff. So they have him tag in, he joins them for a bit. They do the thing. When it's over, he walks away, and they have
Right.
that whole scene where he walks directly over the rock, which is amazing, and all that stuff. But he's out of it at that point. I guess he's at the very end of the movie, he comes back. But um, that I think is like a good example of that kind of like skills and ability thing where it's like their makeup of the party didn't have what they needed to find that specific thing, the helm, right? But
Mhm.
once they got it, they didn't need to stay together, and he had his own agenda there. So I think like thinking in those terms is good, about like what are they bringing to the party. I do like to think, in terms of like kind of shoring up weaknesses in some ways, but I also want, so I guess to roll back a little bit, like I definitely, if this is going to happen, um, and I have realized in just the prep for this talk today, I love NPCs and parties like
Yeah.
massively. Like I love it, and I think this is one of those things that's been ingrained in me because of my initial entrance into RPGs. Like we had, pretty early on, an NPC join our party. So that we had 3 players, and I don't know, I don't want to like claim I know Danny's mind, but like I feel like it probably was a situation of these people are going to die if we move forward and they don't have somebody else helping them out. We didn't really have like a defensive, like what I would call a tank, in that group. It
Hmm.
was two thief like people and then a ranger, me, and that's like we're not super durable at that point in this game. So I think maybe there was some story element, that like tied in really well, but this guy Glenn who joined us, who basically was a fighter, like he stepped in and played that role of like having our backs kind of thing. And then later on, there was another more of a healer kind of person, like you're talking about, that played a role for a while after Glenn had moved on. But I think that like that set a tone for me of wanting this. But like I think it should be, even though I love it desperately and I want it in my games, like I think it should be an organic thing, and it should be really in the hands of the party in a lot of ways. It's not just like me as a GM. I want you all to have this person, so they're going to be there. And like I think there can be some of that, but there's got to be a point where it's like, no, this is a person we want with us. I felt that with Amira, where there were multiple times where it's like we probably could like not have her with us. Like there's points where we could separate, but like we wanted her because one, the story was connected, where it's like she can find these things that we're looking for so we can use them, but also there was enough like there was camaraderie and like friendship, within the game, like built where it's like, no, this is a person who's with us now. It's not just some random person that we hired to heal us all the time. So I like the organic nature of that, of like we got pushed together, but then it became a thing. And I think like that's a good thing to remember when we're doing this, putting NPCs in front of people, of like, is this somebody that they actually are like connecting with, or is it just, if they don't have any care about this, then I probably shouldn't try to push them to like, oh yeah, they're traveling with you now, kind of
Right.
deal. So yeah.
Yeah. I think the second consideration you have to, so the first thing you have to decide is what's their purpose?
Yeah.
Why?
Right.
Why? What's their role here?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
then I think if you decide to do that, you need to have some consideration about the character's background and their personality, right?
Yeah.
So, what is this player's story? What's their
Mhm.
background? How do they tie into this world and into this group? So,
Yeah. Right.
with Amira,
Mhm.
at first she was, this person who was just traveling and needed your help, but then you begin to find out that she was actually the cousin of one of
Yeah.
your party members,
Right.
and that there was they had never met, distant
Yeah.
cousins,
Right.
and there was a sort of relationship there. But you have to think about their backstory and how does it fit into this current campaign. But you also have to think about like what are their motivations and goals, right? What is it that drives this NPC? Why are they doing anything? You need to kind of have
Yeah.
that in mind if you're going to
Mhm.
play this NPC, and it can add depth to like subplots and
Yeah.
conflicts and
Right.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. And then also, their personality traits. How do they and the NPCs interact with the party? How do they react to various situations? Are they friendly? Are they aloof? Are they secretive? Are they combative? And
Yeah.
that can make a difference in the way your party plays. So, for instance,
For sure.
Amira, she's pretty, you know, quiet. I don't know
Mhm.
what's the right word. She doesn't like jump to the front. She kind of is in there when she needs to be in
Yeah.
there, but she's pretty silent. But
Mhm.
then you guys have had another NPC kind of join your party for part of it, which was a guy named Rolo, who was
Yeah.
anything but. He was that
Okay.
kind of sarcastic and like, oh, the great and mighty adventurers are going to do this now. Great.
Right.
He was like constantly like
Yeah. Yeah.
almost putting you guys down.
Uh-huh.
And yet he would kind of come through with something
Yeah.
here and there again,
Yep.
and mostly he was just like kind of there commenting in the background, but he ended up playing a role in the end,
Yeah. Right.
and so that personality trait can be make a big difference in how an NPC actually fits in. So that background for them, their motivation, their
Mhm.
personality is the second thing you have to consider
Yeah.
as you're thinking, do I add this NPC to the party or not? And
Yeah.
that kind of ties in with the third thing. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, that's a cool piece. Like that was the thing I was looking at, like people, and I realized, I think I said this earlier, but I didn't realize how much I loved this until I started listing out all the NPCs that have joined the party for at least some time in the Jade Mask game. But that is like their background, what they're bringing to the party, these kind of things, that like motivation and like attitude kind of thing, I think does play a huge role, because if you happen to have a lot of NPCs that are coming across the path and joining them and they all are the exact same, then it's going to be pretty flat, kind of deal. And I was naming off mine and came to this realization, wow, that's a lot. But like, uh, there was, I don't even remember the order, but there was Curious Spirit, the Tabaxi child who you all found in the swamp, who was being attacked, and you saved her. And she just, it's like, what are we going to do with this kid? And you guys had her travel with you for a little bit before you could figure out how to get her back to her family. Like that was
I'm gonna
short.
do this as we go. Josh is main connection. Josh. Okay. Keep going.
um, so Gothy,
Oh, main connection. Josh.
she that one, so they okay, I'm just going to let everybody know, like, who's listening out there, if you don't know the story. So there was a time when the players could not meet, only like half of the people could do stuff, but we wanted to play something. So this was a side quest, and they went and did this. It was actually my Christmas special. They fought Krampus, and like they did this, but this Goliath huntress, whose name's Gothi, was helping them in this situation, and they had been teleported across the world to do this stuff. And it was one of those things where it's like, well, when you're done, do this, push the button or whatever, and break the seal or whatever it is, and you get teleported back. Well, they basically they were supposed to steal his bag. It wasn't even about killing him; it was stealing his bag. So they grabbed his bag, and then Josh Leonis grabbed the other two and broke the seal. And because he was afraid she was going to get killed, well, she gets teleported, 1,000 miles away, kind of thing, to them, and that's how she ended up with you guys, kind of thing. So when everybody else showed back up, they're like, "Who's this person?" It's like here all of a sudden. Yes, that was Leonis also did that one. Again, she traveled. She was a little bit more of a like she could fight. Curious Spirit was not a fighter at all, and was quiet and reserved and more. I don't want to say helpless, but it was definitely somebody who needed to be protected versus Gothi, who was like essentially a ranger for her people. But then there was a situation with Uncle and with Rhoda, that was a mission kind of situation to take, what would you call that? Like to transport almost to get the person where they needed to go.
And
that was one
connected to all of us.
That was all. Much. Yeah. I mean, like that was kind of the premise of the start of the game. But Rhoda kind of played that role of like, she was traveling with you guys the longest out of that whole trip. And every time the group got pulled aside to like help somebody, she's like, "Are you kidding me? Stopping again. Never going to get where we're going." It's like, I got to go be heroes again, and she just like complain about that stuff constantly. Since everybody didn't like her to begin with, I just decided to lean into it. But so those were like people in that kind of realm. But then I was thinking about like those were multi-session, probably 2 to 7 sessions. Those all people were part of it, if not longer. But I've had some other people in the game that got like taken in for various reasons. Usually it was more about the mission kind of thing, and like Construct Artemis 3192,
hey, that was mine.
Yeah, that was, this like essentially a Warforged kind of construct that had been left in this undercity of an ancient place. That was more about, which it came back into play recently, but that was more about like, can you get us where we need to go? And do some things.
That guide.
Yeah. Guide. Exactly. Like you mentioned. And then Thalra, which once again is connected to Josh. It's Thalra. Essentially, it's the Drow. It's Leonis's fiance. Yeah. Everybody call her
Josh.
Louise. Once again, Thelma. She was part of a specific mission. So like, anyway, I don't need to run continually through this stuff, but it was interesting to see how many. I didn't realize how many NPCs I'd actually like had joined you all at some point for some amount of time. But then like those roles they played were very different, whether it was like being protected or being taken somewhere or helping fight or like doing a very specific task, guiding, those kind of things. And they all had various kind of personality quirks, so they were able to be set apart instead of just that. So just kind of talking into that a little bit, what you were saying there.
Yeah.
So number 3.
And I think that it also speaks to the idea that there are going to be some people who latch on to NPCs quicker.
Yes. Yep.
I.e. Josh. Josh seems to always have an NPC he's like wanting to bring along and take care of and make sure it's safe and all this. And it's just the kind of person he is.
Yeah.
So.
I think I have that a little bit. I love the old leadership feat, like 3-5. It's like, I'm going to get my cohort and I'm going to get my, followers and the baggage train of people. Like I always loved that a lot. I know it can like really slow down things sometimes if you let it, but like, I always thought that was super fun to have all these people with you. So, it's good times.
And so the third thing that I was thinking of when I thought of this is then how does the player dynamics and reactions to this NPC occur? How do they change, and how do they react? So this idea, first of all, the party relationship, how does the NPC get along with the existing members? And we kind of talked about that some, the difference between Rhoda or Rolo. It's funny that they both sound very similar. They were both kind of more snipey with the party versus the ones that like curious spirits that you want to take care of, or the guide who's, but like how is that dynamic of the personal relationships? Are there any potential points of conflict or camaraderie in there? Secondly, in there is the impact on player characters. Will they support or challenge or change the dynamic between players because of this NPC that's come in?
Right.
How do you anticipate that and kind of be ready for it? And then I think a third thing in that kind of player dynamics and relationships is you as the GM, you have to be careful that they don't overshadow your player characters, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You want to make sure that the NPC doesn't take the spotlight from the players because they're a big talker. Every time you enter into a social situation, the NPC steps up and starts doing, that's not part of the goal. You still want the players to be the one driving the narrative and driving the action and driving the skills and getting to play and role play. So
for sure.
Be careful there. Consider that they should enhance gameplay, not outshine in their gameplay. Fourth thing I consider when I'm like deciding like, does this NPC join the party or not, is power level. It's kind of the game balance idea, right? Power level. You want to ensure that the NPCs are balanced with the rest of the party. And this goes both ways, right? You want to make sure that they're not overpowered, right? Sometimes I kind of feel like Amira is a pretty strong fighter, but she's very limited in hitting one person at a time. And so that changes things. And I basically hold her back and less, it's people come to her, or if things are just going like really, really badly, she might step in a little more. But you want to make sure they're not overpowered, but you also want to make sure they're not too underpowered, right? You get Curious Spirit in there, and basically all that's happening is everybody's trying to, it's like the Dreamer in Sentinels of the Multiverse. It's like you're trying to make sure this one very weak person doesn't die and make everything bad. So kind of
I don't see a problem with that. I love it.
and maybe that's the dynamic you're looking for. But think about that power level. Do you want them this overpowered or this underpowered, and why? What does that look like? Yeah. And then secondly, that has to do like with this idea of resource management. So every time, this is something I have to think about, and you have to think about as GM, when you introduce an NPC and they're going around with your party and they fight a little bit with your party, when everything's done, do they get a split of the goods?
Yeah, right.
Do they get an artifact and like a sixth of the gold, or fifth of the gold, or however many players?
Right.
Or are they self-sustaining? And why does that look like? Why do they deny taking everything? You got to think about that.
Yeah,
because if it's a true adventuring party, yes, everybody's going to want to split everything. Right. And when things come up that are like really good, depends on your party. Our party is usually one of those, hey, if somebody can use this thing instead of selling it, we're going to make sure that the person who can use it gets it. Well, what about the NPC? Do they count in that or no? And so think about that. And then the role in gameplay. Combat or utility. What is this person? How will they be in? Are they more of a battle person? Are they more of a problem solving person? And you have to decide whether they're going to be controlled by the GM or whether you're going to let one of the players control them. Right. What's that going to look like? What's their interaction with the world? How might they influence the social interactions that are happening or the world building? Are they known in certain areas of your map? And so they're going to basically, when they go into this area, they're going to have contacts and influences. Will they bring fame or infamy to your group just based on who they are? Usually not, but you could have an NPC that is very well known, and now people react to your party differently because of them. And then their goals that might be in conflict. And this is one that I don't always employ, but like, will the NPCs have hidden motives? And how might that create future tensions and intrigue, right? Loyalty or disloyalty, or hidden disloyalty. I feel like Adam has in some ways done some of that stuff with characters he has. You're not sure, like, are they really for us, or are they kind of working against us? We don't know,
Yeah.
And so those sorts of things
Yeah.
as you're going through. And anything you want to comment on there before I just keep barreling?
Yeah. Yeah. There are a lot of my thoughts were running and then they've blanked. And
They've blanked already.
Yeah, you're talking about the motives thing, something that like I feel like I haven't been able to figure out how to do well, and have like even tried to like dissect at one point. Again, this going all the way back to the beginning for me, right before we met the NPC Glenn. There actually was another NPC that I wouldn't say joined the party, but we were like working closely with in the city, and had been kind of our contact for like, I don't know how many sessions we had played, 10 sessions, 15 sessions in the city, and like betrayed us, at the end of that. And like, it's a thing where I'm like, man, I just like really I loved it, but I've never fully been able to like make that happen in one of my games at IGM in the same way. Partially, I think it may have been the system where we could do nothing. It's like, and whereas like, the game we're in now, it's like, okay, well, you can fly. Several people can misty step. Somebody can like completely keep someone from teleporting. It's like all those things are like a little more powerful, and it's harder to do a good escape, kind of thing sometimes. But like I think that like motive switch is worth it, and it goes into the like treasure splitting thing even for me too, where earlier we were talking about like different personalities, different motivations, things like that. That's a good way to like set somebody apart. Again, if I've got all of these, I think from a not finishing any thoughts here, but like from a probably simplicity of GMing thing, I tend to be like, oh, they don't care about the treasure, kind of thing. But that's not really very story driven. It's more of like I just want you guys to deal with this, and maybe they get some scraps over here that you knew nothing about. But I think that does set a tone. If I've got all these people, it's like Curious Spirit has no reason to try to, maybe she gets like one gold piece and thinks it's the most amazing thing she'd ever seen and just happy, kind of thing. Whereas, Rhoda would be happy to take a sixth of the cut because she's got a Thieves Guild to fund,
2/6,
or 2/6,
that would be 1/3, right?
Yeah. Or you have this like, monk who has got the path of, what was that thing you took one time? The vow of poverty.
Vow of
Like
poverty.
they take a vow of poverty. There's a reason that this person's like, no, I have like said no to all earthly pleasures, kind of thing. And I'm not going to take this gold.
By the way, as a player, that was kind of fun to play the vow of poverty, because like as everybody else is wanting everything, I'm like constantly saying, oh, you take it. I don't need this. Let's give this away. And I would give some stuff to NPCs that we pass, like valuable stuff to like people we just like pass. That was kind of fun.
Yeah. It's interesting that was cool. That was a cool mechanic. I think that was in 3.5. I think we were playing that was your Artemis Balathon, right? The monk. Yeah. So
Evan here was kind of talking about the thing you talked about earlier. It's tough to backstab a tight party of 5 with extraordinary power. What I would say here is this idea of you don't have to have it where they backstab and they're present. Let them be friends. Let them be like, hey, yeah, we're allies. And then they go off to do something on their own, and then they're just gone and nobody knows. And then the betrayal happens. And then there's no misty step that can get them. There's no flight that can matter. It's like they backstabbed us. It's kind of like in that D&D movie, right? The guy who, I guess his backstab happened when they were in that place and everybody got frozen. And he
but it wasn't realized. That wasn't realized that that's what was happening.
They didn't realize it at that point. But like, this whole idea that like they don't even know he's like gone. They meet him years later and figure out that he backstabbed him. But
sorry for any spoilers out there, everyone.
If you haven't seen it by now, are you truly going to go see that D&D movie? So I guess maybe if you're just getting into it.
That I think like with this, the exit strategy thing, like I think I always feel like there's something special about the like haha, I'm going to monologue to you, about how much foolishness you have shown by, and then like there's something with that, whether that's kind of hokey or not, but I do like that idea of like doing it outside of the scene, kind of thing where it's not like I can do something about this right now. Because I do think there's only so many times you can have like the bad guy just pour it out, and like you can do nothing about it because he teleported, but
Yeah. And that brings up
you know,
my next point. Use those exact words, but differently. Exit strategy. I think as far as like when you have an NPC join the party as a GM, you should be thinking, do I have a planned departure for this person to then leave the group?
Yeah.
Is there a place, right? Have an idea of how and when the PC might
Yeah.
leave the party. This could be to them achieving their goal. Could be to betrayal, like we were just talking about, or a dramatic story turn. Maybe they end up being killed.
Right.
You know this is going to happen, but that's how they leave the party, right? They die, and then therefore that causes things to happen. Also, be open to letting your players influence let them kind of their choices shape the way the NPC's fate or the timing of their departure, because that can be, something that helps as well for you as a GM to know when they're leaving. But then the third thing I had in this kind of exit strategy is not really an exit, but do keep the idea open. And we've had this several times where an NPC is a recurring. They return later in the campaign as an ally again, or maybe as a rival or as a neutral figure, right? Yeah. So you have somebody, I think Rhoda is one of those that she was with us for a while. She kind of broke away from our party, but she recurs. She comes back in the party, and we still have feelings and interactions about her. And the same thing with any NPC you have. They can be one of these recurring. We used to have this NPC in a game somebody ran. Maybe it was you, maybe it was Eric. Stoit, the egg guy.
That was mine.
Yeah. So we always would come back, and this dude was always there ready to feed us eggs and talk to us about what was going on and help us in certain ways. Stoit. Having those sorts of recurring character potential is also something that you should think of with an NPC. Yeah. So maybe they're with you for a while. You guys, in our Dormant Mind campaign, you met an NPC named Sylvia who was trying to find her brother, and she left you. But I don't think it's a big spoiler. She's going to recur in this story. She already has once. She will again. She has like some importance in this story. And so, those sorts of NPCs are also great.
And part one of that, she was a traveling NPC with us. Like the first group, she traveled. Yeah, I like that a lot. And I think that's something that has driven my current game a little bit too, with the way that I hoped it would format and the way kind of the situations that are placed before you all, because we've talked about this before, but there's a lot of my games get into that like world travel, and it seems like you're always moving, you never stop, and you're always finding new places, and there's not like a return in a lot of ways, or it's very short if there is. And that was something I really did want, even though there's been world travel and you guys have moved constantly and stuff, but I wanted Tifa's Edge, the beginning town, to be a thing that like it was the beginning and the end and several middles, part where it's like
it
you started
like
there,
you did stuff. Too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's I didn't want to just like leave and never return, because I wanted there to be a sense of, I don't know, home is the right word, but like home base kind of thing. And you get to see changes, it's like, this is a shift in the political climate. This is a shift in what it looks like because things have changed. This is a shift in leadership or just like the people that you interact with. So I think it's a different thing, but I think that goes into that same idea of it may be an NPC traveling, or it's an NPC that travels through the story with you, but they stay in a local place and you just keep interacting. So that's a good point.
Yeah. The last kind of big area I had for consideration as you're a GM getting ready to insert an NPC or bring an NPC in is role playing considerations that you have for your NPC. And I had a few things listed here. First, distinctive voice and mannerisms. So we talk all the time about like NPCs that you can add. You know, at the end of every episode here, we have a little NPC character that you can throw in. Many of them could be recurring sorts of things, but with those ones that join the party or recur in the party, you have to be even more pointed about giving them unique speech patterns or behaviors to make them memorable. Okay, so we love to do that with people that you just meet once because it kind of gives you this flavor of their history or whatever. But like if they're going to come back again and again, make notes so you can replicate them. It makes it so much more when people immediately, without you even saying, you know, this is, you know, this person walking up, when you can just begin talking and they know because of a mannerism or because of the way you talk or whatever it is, that's who this is. Secondly, and kind of married to that is consistency. Make sure that your NPC's personality and behavior remains consistent. Nothing worse than like, this guy's like, oh, I don't think we should kill people. I don't think that's right. And then the next town you go to, it's like, let's kill them all. Just kill everybody. You know, it's like, is this really the same person? It doesn't feel like the same NPC.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure to kind of give them a consistent, unless, you know, the fact that they're changing is some clue to something going on in the world. Something has changed their personality and behavior.
Yeah. Maybe that's you forget and then have to make that call on the fly.
Right.
I sometimes, it's usually not that I don't remember what their voice is, but I just can't get it.
Can't
and I'm
replicate
like,
it.
it's like, you know, it's like this everybody knows what this is supposed to be. I just can't spit it out today. So yeah, it's kind of a weird thing.
And then kind of the last one in the role playing considerations. I kind of touched on this already with combat and some other stuff, but like the idea that make sure your NPC contributes to the players engaging with the world and not monopolizing, you know, conversations and decisions and stuff like that. So all these are things I think as you're having an NPC that could join the party, or maybe it just happens organically. Like Rolo was never intended to join the party, and it just kind of, you know, the conversations continued. They came back, saw him again. He met them in another place. And then I'm like, at that point, I'm like, I think this is going to be an NPC that they keep seeing. And then in that place, I had to be careful not to. Oh, I love talking for this guy so much, and the way he like stabs at everybody, that I'm going to like overtake the party with my role playing, or that I'm going to, you know, all these things that we talked about, the game balance, the power balance, the party dynamics, all these things, you want to think about them and how they relate to your NPCs as you're bringing these NPCs in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're there enough that they matter. They're not there so much that they like replace the characters in any way, kind of thing, you know. And I think it can be a good tool in the places like where, and I don't think you want to rely on this as a crutch all the time, but like the place where the PCs, the players are just like, we have no idea what to do next, you know. And like the NPC sometimes can be, if it makes sense for them to have the wisdom to say so, of like, what about this, you know, kind of thing. Or you can kind of give GM counsel through an NPC, which I think is sometimes more fun. You know, it's like to be able to bring that into the story rather than just being like, well, why don't you check your bag for that key you found earlier? You know, like somebody can say that instead and do that. But there is some chat stuff. I think you were looking at that too. The Rob was commenting on the betrayal thing earlier. I thought that was interesting. Like if there's an NPC betraying, it's not on purpose. So, you know, they realize that they betrayed them, but then like, you know, disappear or whatever. And the PCs are like, well, I just got betrayed, but it's not their fault, so we're not going to go after them, you know, kind of deal. It's kind of interesting. The Wataya is asking, said random in episode question. How much dialogue do you write for NPCs? I've recently gotten into writing dialogue options. It can be tedious yet worthwhile.
Yeah, it's for me, NPCs, it probably depends on like the part of the story they're in. Typically, I don't write. I just know kind of their motivations, and I know like what their role is. You know,
Yeah, right.
how much they would understand, and what their goals. You know, when I understand those things, I just kind of play as if I were a player character that had those
Yeah, right.
motivations,
Yeah.
except I pull myself back, so I'm not front and center all the time.
Hmm.
But there are some situations where maybe you have an NPC who somehow lets them know that there is a, you know, tomb of horrors or of wonders or whatever that,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, you
right.
want to, and you want to like kind of control how that comes out. Maybe you would sit down and kind of write out kind of like what
Yeah,
that
right.
might sound like. I do very little writing out because I'm a very fly by the seat of my pants sort of guy. I very rarely write anything out.
Right.
So, but I know Adam used to write more stuff out when you first
Yeah.
started, at least.
My first campaign, I think I could read you the entire campaign from my side of the things because it was all like plotted. Definitely have pulled back in a lot of ways, but yeah, the motive thing is super important to me. And I do, again, I think I pointed out this was Matthew told me that, like, to think in those terms long ago, and it has changed the way I've interacted in that way. I really liked what you just said about like just imagining that's your player, or that's your character that you're playing. It is, but like it's your like PC, use the motivations kind of thing. I think that's a cool way to think through that. But so I would say little is my like short answer. I do typically have some, if it's important, um, if this is shopkeep a, in the magic place, like I don't feel like I need to have like, oh, this is the thing I really want to say with this person, unless it matters. And it's like, oh, this is a clue to what they're looking for. Or, you know, there may be a thing where I have something written on my notes that's like, somebody in the town knows that the master assassin has a room on Straight Street, like kind of thing, like over here. Like I'm just throwing out stuff. Yeah, it's like that's over here, and but that may be like, okay, so when the PCs come into town, it doesn't matter where they go, somebody's going to have intel that they can give if they're pressed at all, kind of thing. But then there may be some like again, it's the where in the story are you. There may be larger pieces, so I'm not against a kind of a lore dump in the middle of things to like help move stuff in a direction, or at least let people have an educated choice on what they're going to do. So uh example, trying to see if I'm not revealing too much now. The last game we had last Thursday, our party fought the Titan of Chaos finally, and we're like, we're going to just remove this from the table. Like it's not even going to be an option anymore, so that it can't be used against us. And so prior to that, though, there was this NPC that had come in that was a support person that they had recruited essentially because that person had fought another Titan before and they offered their services. So they showed up, and Gideon, who was that actually was Eric's character in my first campaign. If for some of them that doesn't matter at anything, but like that's who it was. And there was a point where I was like, I really want. He fought a Titan before, so surely he has something to offer other than just like spells and sword, kind of thing. So I had some things written down there of like, I want him to be able to pass on. This may be completely different, but these are the stages that we had to fight this thing in. Like we had to break the magical shields that were around it. We had to deplete its like vitality to a certain point, and then we had to take out its essence, kind of deal. And so that was stuff that I did have. I'm like, I don't know when this is going to be said, but when there's a good point for it to happen, I need this to be said because it actually is going to inform how this battle goes, so that the party's not just like shooting this thing or striking this thing and nothing's happening because the shields are still up and nobody knows, kind of thing. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that kind of stuff I feel like is important to have marked. But that's typically the smaller amount of things that I'm gonna like write down. Yeah. Any other thoughts on NPCs, Matthew, before we?
Yeah, no, I think NPCs are really fun, and they can be so fun that you can overdo them. So the big thing is, how do you spice them in and let them be just small parts of your story, but yet memorable parts? What's this, Robert? Maybe remind them not to disintegrate your party members. That was yeah.
Yeah, that happened.
We had a party where one of our actual players was illusioned, pretending to be someone we didn't know, and one of our party members just blasted him and disintegrated him. killed his own party member, allegedly. So the story goes. But anyway, yeah, NPCs. I do think when you start as a GM, you're looking at modules, right? And you're reading the stuff that's there and the characters that are there. But as you play longer and you begin to kind of make your own overarching stories, you begin to find the joy of these NPCs that resonate and the NPCs that irritate. And how do you put them in enough without going too much? And that's the whole struggle of it. But it's also the fun of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So yeah, hopefully as you go through, you'll take some of these thoughts and considerations for how do I give them a purpose? How do I give them a background? How do I make sure that their dynamics with the party are working the way I want, and that they're balanced in power, that their actual role in gameplay is understood by me and by other people, and then I know when they're going to exit or if they're going to be reoccurring. And lastly, like what are the role playing things I'm going to do? That was all the stuff that I said. I just kind of summarized it there. So.
Yeah, it's good. Cool.
So
speaking of NPCs, I think we should talk about one.
Let's do it. Who's our NPC of this week?
Our NPC is Elodie Blackstout, it looks like. And Elodie is one of these from the Masks book here again. Elodie Blackstout, the Honorable Warrior. So this is in the realm of friendly PCs from the book. They're long ago. I realized that I had just been giving villains to us, and so we'd mix it up so that there's villains, neutral people, and more like friendly. And this is in the friendly realm. Elodie Blackstout, the Honorable Warrior. She says, "I fear we are mismatched. I will set aside my axe and face you barehanded to make this fight a fair one." I love her attitude already. She carries a long-handled, bearded axe and wears studded leather armor dyed a deep red.
What is a bearded axe?
I think it's when it has the kind of curve down. I was wondering about that too. I'm like, bearded axe.
Anybody in our chat, if you know what a bearded axe is, write it in there, because I read that and I'm like, what is a bearded axe?
Yeah,
that could be it.
It's like a thing with a hanging down part. So
a thing with a hanging down part. It's a technical term right there.
Yeah, it's technical. She's got this long-handed bearded axe and wears studded leather armor dyed a deep red. Her blonde hair hangs down well past her shoulders. She ties it back before she fights. She refuses to do anything that she considers dishonorable, but she's not preachy about it. She's neither prideful nor humble. Elodie views life as a thing that happens between battles. Setting down her axe would be unthinkable. She enjoys the thrill of battle without losing the respect for combat or her opponent, and she's fierce but without malice for her foes. If she killed a brigand in the woods, she would give him a decent burial. Her motivation is that she carries this axe that's was wielded by her mother and her grandfather before that. Elodie strives to live up to her family's legacy of honor, valor, and strength of arms. She was born from a long line of fighters. She was raised to believe that war comes to all people, and that therefore all people should be ready for war. She values her honor more than her own life, and she would die for her friends in a heartbeat without hesitation. She's not a leader, but she prefers to follow someone who has earned her respect. If she loses that respect, she moves on. She's fought in armies, in mercenary companies, and alongside adventurers, and she takes pride in battle well fought. This is Elodie Blackstout.
I think this is the kind of, the fact that you said this is in the favorable characters. I think this is a character that most parties are going to be like, yes, we respect that idea of honor a lot. and the fact that
Yeah.
it's all about the battle. This is one you could fit in anywhere. You have to be careful with her not to overtake battles,
Yeah,
overtake
right.
to come in and do too much, because she obviously is able and
Yeah.
worthy. So
hmm Yeah, for sure. I really liked that piece of I don't know, there were just things about the way they wrote her that there's like almost like a ritual to the thing, where she like ties her hair back before every battle, or like I like those kind of things played out. I think that's interesting. And even the like burying the brigand that attacked her in the woods kind of thing. Like I think we've talked about that before, but I think that's kind of an interesting uh just always an interesting piece of like I like the characters that like, pray over the dead, at the end of a battle and kind of thing. Like I think there's interesting respect to that. So I liked her with it. I like that axe. I'm always a fan of like uh, legacy weapons, or like what's the it's like a heritage kind of
those are the two words I would have used:
yeah.
heritage and
I feel like there's another word that I can't think of it, but that kind of idea of like I think it's been passed down, and I think you could do something fun with that as well. We talked about the coming back to a character like an NPC that it's like you travel with them maybe a little bit, then you come back and you engage with them again, and that's something I was thinking was like it'd be kind of cool for her to if she traveled with your PCs for a while and then you move on, she kind of goes her own separate way, things happen, adventure, and then you come back one day and she's in the tavern like just full of sorrow because her axe was like stolen, or she lost it in stupid gambling. But like there's something there, and then you have this like other thing where she's very different because she's like lost that thing that she's held on to. Maybe there's a quest in there to go get it back or something like that. But I think she could be a fun one to see, even like changes in a character that doesn't necessarily like make this huge difference to the party, but it matters to them because she's like built a relationship. So that's somebody I think I could see being used and then used later also with that. But yeah.
yeah. And Bataya Hotel has said that looks like a bearded axe or a shigax, skegax. Okay.
Not even
Are
gonna try.
any in which the blade hangs down lower, extends below the butt of the axe. So
The
just kind of
butt
what
of
you
the
were
axe.
saying. I'm assuming that means where the axe head meets the handle, and then so if you're looking at it sideways, it then curves down lower, right? And maybe
Interesting.
comes up. Not sure, but
Wow.
we'll have to look up some pictures.
Yeah, for sure.
And you all will too. Look them up. Google can tell you all kinds of good stuff. So, Elodie with her bearded axe.
I'm confused. All right.
I'm confused.
Gonna have to check it out.
All right, let's jump to our haversack. Do we
Yeah.
have any questions in the haversack this week?
Yep, we have a haversack question from Evan Bright. And the short of it is, what topics or questions should I cover ask in session 0? But I'm going to read the actual question, or the actual letter. This is haversack questions batch 2024-11-14. That was today. So he says, I'm about to start a mini campaign with 2 of 3 players I haven't met. What topics or questions should I cover, ask in a session 0? So far, I'm thinking TTRPG facets that they enjoy or dislike, expected campaign maturity rating, scheduling like frequency, confirming sessions, what to do when X players can't attend, cancel, proceed with character disappearing, proceed with character on autopilot, tropes, cliches, subject matter worth removing for taste or comfort, tone preference / goofiness level, preferred campaign premise among the options that he would run, preferred RPG system among the options that he would run, collective or GM only world generation. So like, do you do it together or separate, or like just the GM? character generation, mechanics and goals slash hooks slash arc potential, online communication channels and resource storage. So those are just like the kind of things Evan's thinking about already. Are there other questions or topics that we feel like he would cover?
Feels pretty thorough to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those things are good. Usually, if there's something that because of the game I'm going to run, I'm like, I think Adam in this last game we ran, he said no barbarians. And then immediately, one of our players made a barbarian.
Yes, that happened. Yeah, it's fine.
You made him a bard barbarian.
It's a barbarian. Yeah,
so it was different.
I'm unsure if that's actually real, but yeah, I feel like that's really just like talking through this, like TTRPG facets they enjoy or dislike. I think that's a really good thing to know, especially like I'm hanging on I'm about to start a mini campaign with 2 of 3 players I haven't met. So like there is this getting to know you kind of situation, you know, that I think there is like there's some importance there, and that kind of stuff. There may be another piece of that, but like when we talk about the 8 types of fun, and even like the hats that we wear, like those 3 roles, I think those are good questions to like dig into that kind of connect to that of like what is your, I don't really know this person, I'd love to know like what actually is fun to them. Is it like I just want to get together with people, or is it like I want this like deep narrative story, or is it I just love to roll the click clacks, you know, kind of thing. Like what is what's the draw, you know, and then I can run a better scenario, I think, if I know those things. So that's good. I do think the like maturity rating and goofiness level, I think those are good things, especially with like people you haven't played with before, of like what's the expectation. And even like from our standpoint as a GM, like I don't want to, you know, it's like maybe there's stuff I would like it to not be ridiculous all the time. I'd like there to be able to be some seriousness. Also, I don't want to go this far in the maturity level. Like I kind of have lines and boundaries there too, you know, like being able to share that from your standpoint too. Scheduling, like I think all these things are good. I
think
think
one of the things you talked about was the character creation. Typically when we're starting a session 0, everybody wants to know, oh, how do I divvy stats? You know, we have to decide how that's going to be. But then I also like to go to the other part too, especially if you're doing the 8 types of fun and you find out they love narrative and storytelling and stuff. I think it's important to say, okay, let's talk about like who your character is, like a backstory of who your character and how they know each other. Those 2 things are typically something I like to establish in that session 0 so that then they can begin, you know, knowing how they meet. And maybe it's as simple as we're all sitting in a bar or all sitting in a tavern. But yeah.
Yeah. I really liked the that thought process about like collective or GM only world generation, and being able to, if it is collective, like do that a little bit in that session. Maybe there's a session, you know, 0.5 or something like that like that happens in, but I think that's a cool thing. And if it's like, okay, the GM, we're expecting the GM to give us the setting, especially if it's mini campaign, it may be easier to do that. Like giving them some information about what that looks like, you know, like this is the world you're going into, the way the setting feels, the kind of people you interact with, like that's a good thing for the character creation to have. I guess it depends on the system, you know, it may be like just expect a generic fantasy world, you know, like that's like one thing. But if it's, you know, a different kind of system where it's like modern or superheroes or zombies or like whatever, you know,
all on airships.
Yeah, all on airship. Like it's like, you know, you don't want to come to the table and it's like, oh, I really thought this was the case. So I like that idea about just talking world and sharing that too. So I think, yeah, my two, I think to add to that list or like define a little more is just like, what are their types of fun? What are they expecting? What do they like from a GM if that's available? And then being able to bring some setting information to them, I think would be a important piece. Yeah. Cool.
So
Thank
I
you.
think that's the only question we had in the mailbag. Am I right?
Yep. That's the only, that's the only one I'm seeing today. So,
all right. So
again, appreciate those. So,
having talked about all the stuff we talked about with adding an NPC to your party, what is it we're talking about next time? Omaha, kill.
Kill a moose. I think that we should move on.
By the way, if you don't understand what that means, he said at the beginning of this, he would call an audible. Peyton Manning, prolific Colts quarterback, was known for getting up and calling an audible that started with Omaha. For those of you who are non-sports people.
Yeah. You can YouTube that, just Peyton Manning Omaha. It's pretty worthwhile. I think there were several commercials actually that included that too that he did. But I think so. This whole thing is forces. We're talking about like different forces that can be joined to the party. So like your people that are, part of your crew there, and NPCs can be that. I think the question was like, do we need to talk about this more? And I think that we should move on and talk about summoned creatures on the next episode. Yeah. So summoned creatures.
Yeah. So that's what we'll be doing. That's, I think, it for us this time. But next time, we're going to talk about summoned creatures.
Yeah.
And what they mean to your party, as well as giving you an encounter starter and an NPC starter.
Cool.
So I think that's it for us this week. Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
We will catch you next time. Bye.
See y'all.